US President Donald Trump has said there will be very severe consequences if Russian President Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the Ukraine war after Friday's summit. Now, Trump was very clear in a virtual meeting on Wednesday with European leaders that the US wants to, in fact, achieve a ceasefire at the upcoming US-Russia summit in Alaska on Friday. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has also underlined that if Putin does not work towards a ceasefire, there will be severe consequences. Now, in the same meeting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he told the group that Putin is quote-unquote bluffing ahead of the planned meeting with Trump. My colleague Maha Siddiqui, meanwhile, brings you more from Anchorage. But first, we get you some reactions.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
Звісно, ми обговорили сьогодні ситуацію на полі бою. Я сказав президенту Сполучених Штатів Америки і всім нашим європейським колегам, Путін блефує. Він старається натиснути перед зустрічю на Алясці, на всіх напрямках українського фронту. Росія намагається зобразити, що спроможна окупувати всю Україну. Безумовно, це їх бажання. Також Путін блефує, начебто санкції для нього не важливі і що вони не працюють. Насправді санкції дуже допомагають і б'ють по російській воєнній економіці.
Мы рассматриваем выпрашиваемые европейцами консультации как политические и практически ничтожное действие. Европейцы на словах поддерживают дипломатические усилия Вашингтона и Москвы по урегулированию кризиса вокруг Украины. Фактически же Евросоюз их саботирует.
L'échange avec le président Trump a permis d'éclairer ses intentions pour la réunion du 15 août prochain et nous a permis d'exprimer très clairement nos attentes et je tiens ici à l'en remercier. Et je crois pouvoir dire que plusieurs messages sont ressortis de l'échange que nous venons d'avoir et qui sont à mes yeux très importants. Le premier, c'est que le président Trump a été très clair sur le fait que la volonté américaine était d'obtenir un cessez-le-feu à l'occasion de cette réunion en Alaska. Et c'est très important qu'à l'occasion en effet de cette réunion, il puisse y avoir un cessez-le-feu qui soit obtenu par les États-Unis d'Amérique, et nous soutenons cette initiative, en même temps que de nouveaux échanges de prisonniers et des libérations d'enfants.
I'm standing right outside the joint base, Elmendorf-Richardson, that is going to be the venue for the high-stakes meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two leaders will be meeting here on Friday. An area of over 85,000 acres. This base is strategically important for the United States, keeping a watch over the Arctic region as well as the Pacific Ocean, both of which are resource-rich and strategically important for the US. And that is why there are some who believe that the optics perhaps could be all wrong in choosing the venue. They believe that having the president of a rival nation, Russia, on a critically important US base may perhaps not have been the best idea. However, the short notice in which Alaska was declared as the venue for the meeting, many believe that this was the only venue in Alaska and Anchorage that could have provided the sanitized, safe, security-wise space for the two leaders to sit down and discuss a very critical issue that will have global ramifications, that of the possibility of ending the war in Ukraine. In Anchorage, in Alaska, this is Maha Siddiqui for NDTV.
Ukrainians in Kyiv are voicing skepticism that the planned summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin will bring the war in Ukraine to an end. Now, Trump has threatened very severe consequences, as we just mentioned, if Putin does not agree to stop his war in Ukraine at the summit to be held in Alaska on Friday, even though he did not say what those consequences might be. Meanwhile, Kyiv residents weren't optimistic of a breakthrough. Here's more.
Навряд чи щось глобально вирішиться буквально в ці дні. Моя думка тому що ми вже бачили неодноразово, як перемовини переносилися, зривалися, ще щось змінювалося. І, на жаль, найважливіше зараз звертати увагу все-таки на фронт і те, що відбувається там, а не на перемовини. І я би радила більше звертати, наскільки я би могла це робити з точки зору своїх загалом там якихось знань, я би радила просто більше звертати увагу на голос військових.
We shift our focus to Western Europe, where Italy's government received 114 Palestinian evacuees from Gaza on Wednesday night. This includes 31 children in need of dire medical assistance. The young patients are all affected either by severe injuries or amputations or serious congenital diseases. The Italian Air Force, meanwhile, flew the evacuees over in 3 C-130 cargo airplanes from the southern city of Eilat in Israel. One of the planes carrying 6 patients and 22 of their relatives landed at Rome's military airport. The other landed in Pisa and Milan, carrying 12 and 13 young patients respectively. The Palestinians were then transferred by ambulances to various hospitals. Italy has carried out 14 medical evacuations since January 2024. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit India next week on the 18th of August to hold bilateral talks with National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. The visit will take place shortly before PM Modi visits China. It's his first trip since clashes 5 years ago, which led to heightened military tension on the border. He's there for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit's meet. Meanwhile, Yi will visit India. It will also take place against the backdrop of US President Trump hitting both Beijing and Delhi with massive tariffs. Now, Trump has slapped a 50% tariff on India, including a 25% penalty for the purchase of Russian weapons and oil. India's Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, or the AERB, said it held a bilateral technical meeting with the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission to strengthen cooperation on nuclear safety and regulation as India looks to expand its nuclear power capacity. An Indian delegation participated in the meeting held between the 6th and the 8th of August at the NRC headquarters in Maryland's Rockville. The AERB said in a statement dated the 12th of August. The UK, France and Germany wrote on the United Nations on Tuesday, saying that they are ready to reimpose sanctions on Iran. Now, this if a diplomatic solution to handle the country's nuclear program is not reached before the end of August this year. Now, the group, also known as the E3 or the European Three, said if Iran is not willing to reach a diplomatic solution before the end of August or sees the opportunity of an extension, a so-called snapback mechanism will in fact be triggered. Over in Latin America, the Brazilian government on Wednesday unveiled a plan to support local exporters affected by a 50% tariff imposed by US President Donald Trump on several products, mind you, from the South American nation. Dubbed Sovereign Brazil, the plan provides for a credit lifeline of 30 billion reais, or almost $5.5 billion, among other measures. Brazil's President Lula Inácio da Silva described the plan, which also includes a bill to be sent to the Congress as a first step to help local exporters. Across the northern border, residents in one Washington, D.C. neighborhood lined up Wednesday to protest the increased police presence after White House said the number of National Guard troops in the nation's capital would ramp up and federal officers would also patrol the streets around the clock. Now, after law enforcement set up a vehicle checkpoint along the busy 14th Street Northwest corridor, hecklers shouted "Go home, fascists," and other insults. Some protesters stood at the intersection right before the checkpoint and urged drivers to turn away from it as well. The action intensified a few days after President Donald Trump's unprecedented announcement that his administration would take over the city's police department for at least a month. We get you more.
Right now, trying to get people to turn left to not go down 14th Street. There's a random search right now. They've pulled over about 6 cars. We've seen 2 people get detained, one by ICE, one by the police, taken, no rhyme or reason.
And I just want to tell people at this point that it's not been confirmed. Continue.
That is what it seems like. So we're trying to get people to turn left so that nobody drives down this street and doesn't have to be wrongfully detained.
The US national debt had surged to a record $37 trillion, surpassing pre-pandemic projections by several years. Now, the Congressional Budget Office initially anticipated this milestone after fiscal year 2030. However, to their dismay, and much to their dismay, the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic and substantial borrowing by both the Trump and the Biden administrations to stabilize the economy has accelerated the debt's growth. Over in Europe, Greece continues facing its hardest days yet of this year's wildfire season. A senior firefighting official has told Western media officials. Now, this statement comes after dozens of new blazes erupted in a single day, mind you, and extreme weather hampers extinguishing efforts. Strong winds, prolonged dryness, and intense heat have worsened conditions across much of the mainland and also on the islands, forcing evacuations and dramatic rescue operations in recent days in turn. Elsewhere in Europe, heat alerts were issued in Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, and on the Balkans on Tuesday as well, with temperatures expected to soar well above 40 degrees Celsius in some regions. Shift our focus to Southeast Asia, where Hong Kong's central business district and outer airport were hit by violent gusts and a deluge of heavy rainfall, with the city again issuing its highest rain warning as tropical storm Podul passed the region. Parts of Hong Kong have received as much as 400 millimeters of rain since midnight alone, with flights disrupted and schools shut for the entire day. A black rain warning was issued for the fifth time, breaking a record that was set earlier this month itself after the city was swamped by a prolonged deluge. No major injuries, however, have been reported so far. Clashes erupted between Serbian anti-government protesters and supporters for a second day in Wednesday in a major escalation, as you see right there on your screen, after more than 9 months of persistent demonstrations against autocratic President Alexander Vučić. The president's supporters repeatedly hurled flares at protesters in the northern city of Novi Sad, near the office of Vučić's ruling Serbian Progressive Party. Protesters then smashed office windows as riot police were deployed outside to guard the building. Air India will begin a gradual suspension of flights to allow an orderly shutdown of the country's largest airline as it faces a potential work stoppage by its flight attendants on Saturday. The airline said that the first flights will be cancelled Thursday, with more on Friday, and a complete cessation of flying by Air Canada and Air Canada Rouge by the weekend. The union, representing around 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants, has issued a 72-hour strike notice. This was done back on Wednesday. Now, in response, the airline issued a lookout notice.